am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Angie Grissom. She is the owner of the Rainmaker Companies and serves as Chief Relationship Officer. Her role in the firm involves high-level strategy, strategic partnerships, thought leadership, consulting, and program and curriculum development. She works with managing partners and firm leaders and transforms the lives of clients through innovation, goal setting, coaching, training, and accountability development. Angie is consistently recognized as one of the most influential people and recognized thought leaders in the accounting industry. She is a frequent presenter at the national and international conferences and a regular contributor to publications and podcasts. She was published in a national Ask Angie column for several years and is the She in Accounting Today's column known as He Said, She Said, and the developer of Rain Checks series. Her reputation and passion are renowned, and she brings all of this to her role at the Rainmaker Companies. During our interview, she shares her journey coming from a creative family and how that led to her entrepreneurship and consulting. Learn about her leadership lessons that she's learned along the way and has incorporated into her career that has led to her success and to the people around her. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. And today I'm with my good friend, Angie Grissom. She is the owner of Rainmaker Companies and Chief Relationship Officer. And Angie, you want to just give a little brief introduction on yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Amy. I am an owner at the Rainmaker Companies. We are based in Nashville, but we do work with professional service firms all over North America and internationally. And we work with accounting firms primarily, and law firms, engineer firms, and consulting firms, and help them grow their practices and help with culture and leadership development.
Awesome. So, what the work that Rainmaker does is really, really helpful for accounting firms, looking to grow and transform and so forth. But we don't always start there in our careers if that's what we're doing with our life. So would love to start off kind of back in your history of where did you grow up? What was your parents? What did they do? And siblings and that sort of thing. So give us a little bit of your family background.
Sure. So I grew up here in Middle Tennessee, and we're in Nashville, and actually live in Franklin, which is a suburb of Nashville. So I grew up here, and as much as I've traveled over the last 15, 17 years, it's hard to believe that I haven't lived all over the world, but I've really been here for most of my life. And had very supportive parents, very empowering parents, who taught us that we could achieve anything that we wanted to, and both very creative, and two siblings. And so always knew from the time I was a little girl that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Wanted to go into consulting, and so I went into pre-law with a focus on possibly going to law school, knowing I wanted to go into business, and ended up with a business degree and decided to go into consulting early in my career. Really did not know that I would land in the accounting space. Never really thought about that, but one of my first roles out of school, I landed with a company called Watt and Company, which eventually became the Rainmaker Companies. And so fell in love with working with professionals and CPAs, and found that I was able to do the things that I always wanted to do within that niche. And so it's been quite a ride. It's been lots of fun.
So let's go back to your parents. So what did they do? What were their jobs?
What were their jobs? So my father was in the lumber industry. My grandparents always owned lumber companies and things like that. And actually, as a matter of fact, my father's family moved from just north of Atlanta, Georgia, to Tennessee because my mother's father, who owned a lumber company, and several companies recruited him. So that was the industry. And my mom was in medical administration. And so my parents lived in Atlanta for several years after they were married, but moved back to Middle Tennessee where her family was. And so I have family here.
That's such a literal name of a city.
What was that?
Middle, like that's so literal. Is
Oh,
it truly like the middle of Tennessee?
no, it's just Middle Tennessee area. So
yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. So there, Tennessee is long and horizontal, and
Yeah.
so it's Nashville, Franklin area. Yeah. So
Okay.
Middle Tennessee.
I've never heard that reference before. So,
Well, it's very, very different from East Tennessee, where the mountains are, and West Tennessee, where Memphis is. It's almost like three different states. So, yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So my parents lived in Atlanta for a while. I have family down in Georgia, and also in the Nashville area. So, yeah.
So, were you a part of that lumber business much
No,
growing
no,
up? Okay. So,
absolutely not.
your dad work a lot of hours doing that, or what was his?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, he was, super busy, hard worker, was up early in the morning. He actually went out on his own early in his career to start his own business, and then worked for other people as well. But, very, very outdoorsy and into nature and being outside. And he actually picked up a hobby when I was, I don't know, probably 10, 11 years old, where his hobby was actually woodworking. And so he
Okay.
has made incredible furniture. He's
Oh,
since passed away several years ago, but I have beautiful, beautiful cutting boards and library chairs, and really beautiful furniture that he has made. He was very artistic. He would sit on the couch, and he would draft out something he wanted to build, a table or a piece of furniture, and then he would find the wood, and he would buy the equipment, and he would make these things and stain them, and they were absolutely gorgeous. And so
wow.
very, very artistic. And my mother actually, in her spare time, was a poet. So she wrote many, many
Oh,
poems,
wow.
and she was a great, great writer. My sister's also a great writer. Um, and so she was very creative in her own right, and would write really neat poems and things like that. So very creative, supporting, empowering parents.
Yeah, and you don't hear a lot of people that focus on poetry, and it's like almost like a forgotten language
It is.
anymore.
When we had projects when we were kids, a lot of my friends would beg my mother, "Please, Evelyn, write my poems for me for
Yeah.
English class." It's funny. She loved
Now
it.
they're rap songs.
Exactly. Well, I don't know how well they would translate actually to rap songs, but at some point when I have a spare minute, I would love to have them published, because they're pretty great actually.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So, growing up with creative parents, did you have a creative hobby?
absolutely, I was always drawing. I was always painting. Always involved in a lot of extracurricular things that were creative. I remember just art classes and dance. I was in dance lessons and ballet and tap and all of those things before I was even in school early
Hmm.
on. But one of the things that I remember doing that was really creative, that probably gave way to some of the things that I do now, is I remember just putting collages together. Remember back
Hmm.
in the day before
Hmm.
Pinterest, where you could actually grab magazines and cut out pictures of things that you liked or whatever, and put them together on a poster board, and I would cover my door with these amazing collages that I loved, that were really creative, and just loved the idea of creating. I would start businesses when I was little. I actually started Dance with a Star before Dance with a Star was a thing. And I remember being a child and cutting out the faces of celebrities, and then creating these bodies with
Oh my
with
gosh.
note I'm serious, I have them with notebook paper, and then coloring them, and then charging my family to dance with them, and they paid for that. And my uncle Fletcher actually still brings that up and laughs. It was completely my idea, Amy, before it became a show. But
Oh my
I didn't
God.
get on that quick enough. But it was super fun. But yeah, always creative, and always doing stuff like that. And I really wanted a career where I could continue to be creative. I couldn't do the same thing over and over, and I couldn't really
Right.
be stuck behind a desk and things like that. So, consulting was one area that excited me because of the ability to create whatever you wanted to create in terms of change management, and where your job looks different every day. So that really did stem from being a little girl.
So when you said you wanted to be an entrepreneur, how did you know what that looked like or why?
I knew that I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny in terms of travel, in terms of how much money I could or could not make. I knew that I wanted to be really my own boss from the time
Hmm.
I was little, and so my grandfather, my mom's father, was an entrepreneur as well,
Okay.
and had several businesses, and was really successful. And so that was certainly an influence. And again, I just sort of from childhood sort of grew up starting my own businesses. One other one, which is not super creative, but you do what you can, resourceful.
Exactly.
I would buy things like gumball machines and charge my siblings for the gum, charge them to come into my room and then charge them for the gum, which lasted, a day until they literally said, forget this, and just stole the gum. But I get it.
Yeah.
But just things like that, just finding fun ways, babysitting and, stuff like that from early on.
Yeah. I love that rent time in the room. Even to enter the room to get the gum. Uh, I remember, oh, I know what my brother would do at that age. So I was a swimmer. My other brother was a swimmer. So sitting through swim meets was so boring. And so my youngest brother decided to sell Cabbage Patch cards, I think were
Yeah.
at the time, what Cabbage Patch Kid cards or whatever. And so he'd basically rent them at the swim meets. And my parents caught wind of like, what is he doing? Like, but yep. Same
So
thing when you've
funny.
got that mind. Yeah. And okay, so you have this vision from your grandfather of what an entrepreneur looks like, right? And I'm the same as you. My grandmother was an entrepreneur, my grandfather, my mom. So I think as a child, you can look at all of that and like you said, you see them making their own money or you see the outside stuff. What surprised you about being an entrepreneur that you didn't know then when you made that decision?
That well, I I don't know what surprised me. It is a roller coaster, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
The highs are high, the lows are scary in
Yeah.
terms of day to day. And I've seen graphics that show the day in
Mm-hmm.
a day in the life of an entrepreneur. I'm sure you've seen them,
Yeah.
where when successes are so amazing because they're your successes, they're your teams. I love to empower people and build a team. I have an incredible team, and they're all very entrepreneurial. And so it's great working together as a team, and seeing the successes and the challenges that you overcome and things like that. But it's up to you, and livelihoods depend on you, and upturns, downturns, all of those things. I mean, it's tough, and I have a heart for managing partners and people in leadership that are dealing with those kinds of things. And so I coach a lot of firm leaders and managing partners, as well as up and coming leaders around those challenges. But they are, they're real, and it's so rewarding and so incredible. But also, it can be terrifying, as you know, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's the little thing, I'll just use my yoga studio in the last week. I've had a studio manager with me the whole time it's been open, 7 years. And, we've taken a lot of hits with COVID and the business looks totally different. And right now, I mean, and with the fitness industry, we don't know what's going to happen with it ever again.
Right.
What it will look like. But she gave her notice a week ago to go back to being a school teacher. And, you sit there as the owner and you're like, she wasn't a partner because, she was a manager, but I viewed her just as such. I mean, we balanced each other running that business. And really, that's when you realize, like, it's all on you. No matter, everyone else can walk away.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But, and I think, as you become more mature and you run more businesses, because these times are going to hit that are really hard and you got to take challenge. The culture you create is really important. How the other teachers have stepped up, finding out this news and supported, but also learning how to regulate your own energy through it. Mm-hmm. Because there's nothing more stressful, or you get those moments of like, like, what am I gonna do now? And then you gotta step back, breathe. I took a evening to myself, and if I need to cry, I need to cry, whatever it is. But those are some things for me that I think, as an entrepreneur, you can't know when you start out, because it all seems so exciting,
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying about regulating your energy and engagement even, and that's one of the lessons I've learned, as well as attitude. So days are going to be hard, days are going to be long. You're going to have a lot going on, but you got to go back to really the silver lining of why you're doing what you're doing, and focus on the successes that you've had. And and when you get those emails from people that say, oh my gosh, you transformed my life, you helped me, you got to keep those, because sometimes you got to open them back up.
There, I keep them there for that reason.
Yes,
just to have a reminder when I need it.
And you will have days. I have days. So, but with that, you also have to remember, and sometimes it's difficult too, but you have to remember with your team, they're feeling the same way. Like whether they're business owners or not, you got to remember to say you're doing a really great job. So it's important.
Yeah. So what have you learned as far as coming into your own business? So, well, let's start over. So you go to this, you graduated with a law degree, is that what you said? Or you did
business degree.
Business degree.
Right.
So what were you originally doing for Woodworking Company?
I did for Woodworking Company.
Yeah.
I started out really in a marketing assistant role, and was given the choice to move into training or consulting or our international alliance division, and chose to go into consulting pretty early on.
Okay. And so what was consulting defined as?
So our consulting arm really focused on partnering with public accounting firms and working with them to help them to create a strategic plan, a strategic growth plan, really focus on goals, partner accountability, work with different segments within the firm, work on areas like strengthening culture, business development efforts, partner goals and accountability, things like that. So around, anywhere from, mid-sized CPA firms, I typically worked with the managing partner and the executive committee and the partner group of firms to help them develop a plan and roll out a plan over several years.
Okay. So I think this is a good part too. So you go into this business, you're not an accountant, right?
Right.
And then you're put in a position to do strategic growth plans for an accounting firm that you've never actually walked in those shoes and done that. And I think a lot of people as entrepreneurs, like, you can go into a business or as a consultant and think
mm-hmm, right.
But until what your job's going to be or what you're going to encounter, and then you get these opportunities to take on something that you've never done before, challenge yourself. So how did you get yourself comfortable with consulting on things that you hadn't done before?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, I was 24, and a lot of my clients were my parents' age. And I remember one barrier being, if you're not a CPA and you're not older and you don't have gray hair, and these things were said to me, how are you going to be effective in consulting? And I remember very early on thinking, I don't have to know what you know. I have to know what I know. And I have to be effective in change management, regardless of the age, regardless of anything. And so early on, I just started
So can you repeat that?
reading.
I don't have to know what you know.
Yeah, I don't have to know what you know. I just need to know what I know and be able to affect change management positively. And so
Mhm.
I did things like read every book I could get my hands on, and did all kinds of research and worked really, really long hours early on. Still do a lot, but just really, it was very, very difficult to get up to speed in that.
Mhm.
But I wanted to, and I was curious about it, and
Right.
it was fascinating to me. I actually met a gentleman named Blaine Lee, who was one of the founders of Franklin Covey, and I met him at one of our conferences early on, and he pulled me aside, and he said, it was interesting. He pulled me aside and he said, I see something in you, and I think you're going to be successful, and I think you're going to be a leader of people. And let me tell you what you need to do. And it was fascinating because I didn't
Wow.
know him, and I think he was Oprah's mentor at some point too, which was super cool. I thought I need a
Yeah.
mentor like Oprah's mentor, but he did, and
Exactly.
he drew this picture saying, you got to have credibility, you've got to do this, you've got to work hard, and I still have it. And he has since passed away, but he was excellent. He would check on me, every so often, every 6 months or something, until he passed away. But that was a boost for somebody to grab me and say, I think that I see
Mhm.
something in you. And so I've had, my parents were very much that way, and I've had, a handful of people um, that have been that for me. But I, just very driven and tried to figure it out. And every time you have a success, you build on that. So
Well, and I think that takes confidence in yourself, right? Because um, consulting, entrepreneurship, going into it, like you know that you're not going to know everything. I mean, there's no every you might have a base layer, and then every experience you go in, someone's going to throw something at you that you weren't aware of before, was a new issue. So it's having the confidence of how you respond in those situations and still have credibility. So how do you think you've been able to do that?
well, I was told early on by my former boss that um, you need to position yourself in a way that you are working with the leaders of firms, and you need to be credible, in that way. And so I just sort of went into it that way. I was never really afraid of authority. I wasn't one of those kids
Mm-hmm.
that was afraid of teachers or anything like that. So it was never, I never felt like I've got to, um, you know, um,
Lockstep.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I felt like I had a seat at the table. I should have a seat at the table. I feel like everybody should have a seat at the table. And so, one lesson I did learn though was, nobody's going to draw the map for you. There's not going to be somebody that's going to say, okay, Angie, guess what? Here's the map. This is what you need to do in order to be a successful trainer, consultant, entrepreneur, whatever. That doesn't exist necessarily. There are people that can lead you, certainly, and you can learn what to do, and many, many times what not to do in people that you meet, clients, otherwise. But nobody's going to draw you a map. And so I think that you just have to determine what it is that you want to do. What is your vision for where you want to be? You might not know exactly, but then you forge your own path, and you connect with people along the way to help you do that, and you help other people do that. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So you've mentioned a couple times mentors or people that have actually, not even people you've gone after, but people have reached to you that have helped your success. Where do you do that yourself? Where do you find your, because I think this is like something we pass on, right? And it's those moments that are the ones that were the confidence builders for you as well in your career.
So are you asking, where do I find mentors for
Yeah.
me, or how do I
How do you help others now?
other people?
Like, yeah.
Well, I am blessed and lucky enough to be in a position where most of the work that I do, I have the ability to influence other people through coaching that I'm doing with individuals, whether they're firm leaders or up and coming firm leaders, or maybe it's, a team member. And many times they coach me right back, which is so important and so needed. Or different industry consultants in the profession where we help each other out. It takes a village, just like with raising children.
Yeah.
And so I do that through my work. Sometimes I have people that I meet that really connect with me and say, will you coach me? Will you connect with me? And absolutely, will absolutely do that. But it's part of my day to day. But I do have specific relationships where I work on that, through clients and people that I meet. So
Yeah. Awesome. So I like to end with some rapid fire questions. So you can pick a category: family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Oh goodness, it doesn't matter. Let's do family, friends.
Okay. So things or actions I don't have that I want with my family and friends.
Let's see. I need, okay, that I don't want.
That
Okay,
I
my
don't have that I don't want.
that I don't have that I
That I
don't.
want. I'm sorry. This one is I don't have that I want. Yeah.
Okay, don't have that I want. I want more spontaneity and making plans with making memorable plans and activities. So I don't want to be stuck in the rut of we get together, we do this, or things like that. I really want to do better about reaching out to people, even virtually these days, reaching out to people, and even people I haven't spoken with in a long time, and creating some interesting memories. So
Yeah. Awesome. So things are actions that I do have that I want.
I have the best friends and community on the planet. And so I love it. I love my circle of people, and I love how it grows. And they're friends from when I was 4 years old to new friends that I meet all the time. So I love my circle of people.
Things are actions that I don't have that I don't want.
I think everybody growing up has friends sort of on the peripheral that aren't really friends, just groups of friends and stuff like that. And I think we all, at some point in our life, have ended up in circles or around people that maybe we weren't super close to, and it was not genuine. And
Right.
I know a lot of people still deal with that as an adult. I don't have a lot of that, and I like that. My people are my people, and it's really good, and it's very authentic. So I don't struggle with, oh my gosh, I don't want to see them or hang out with them. I don't have that right now.
Right.
It's great.
Okay. Things or actions that I do have that I don't want.
You know what? Reluctance to reach out to people that I haven't been in touch with. I have friends that I was very, very close to that have moved away, or we've gotten really busy and I haven't reached out to them, and I really need to do that. So
Yeah.
I need to change that and open that up. It's really, really important. So
Awesome. So before we end our discussion today, are there, certain things that you want to make sure people come away with from our conversation today that we didn't cover in your story?
I would just say, don't wait for somebody to create your path, create your own path. And your path changes and your journey changes, but don't be afraid. Don't be afraid that you're not smart enough, good enough, old enough, gray enough, whatever it is. Don't let that stop you. One other thing that I would say is, even though it's difficult to be a professional or just a working person or have children and balance the whole thing, don't make that all that you are. It's really easy for it to become all consuming, and you know what I mean. It's really with kids or without kids and with jobs. and you lose what lights a fire in you. And so for many, many years, between juggling our two boys and really trying to build and run a business, I think I lost a lot of the hobbies and things that gave me energy,
Mhm.
whether it be hiking or photography or um, traveling for
Yes.
leisure, stuff like that. Cooking. I've picked cooking back up, which is awesome. Um, Try to blend that in the
Hmm.
whole time, because work will always be there, and
Yeah.
blend it in so that you've got a really good balance. So that's probably a lesson that I would tell myself from 10, 15 years ago, I guess. So
Yeah. It'll all come together. Just trust that the process.
balance it out. Yes, for
Yes.
sure.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on today and sharing your story.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I love this. This is really great.
And now for our mindful moments with my interview with Angie Grissom. And I think it's really interesting how many people in different leadership positions that I have interviewed on this podcast come from a creative background, and how we have these hobbies or these things that come naturally to us as we are children, and things that we spend most of our time on, that as we get older and start shifting to our career, that we lose sight of. And I think it's really important to think about what in your life have you given up along the way, that when you were a child you spent a lot of time doing, and it's when time disappeared, and how you can go about incorporating that back into your life. And during Angie's story, she talked about her creative parents and the creative outlets that she had as a child, and what that created as far as thought process to become an entrepreneur one day, and just know that whole dimension of what is possible and how you have the confidence to go after it. I have always thought about my background in music and how it really prepared me for my career going forward, because of the time that you had to spend rehearsing and practicing in order to get the final product good. And I think for all of us, if we're going to be good in the roles that we have, coming back on that knowledge, those things we trained on as a child, whether that be sports or art or whatever that might be, and the time that it took to be good at it, and remembering that, so that we can take that into our career and put the same kind of rigor into learning the things, practicing to make sure our final product is just as good. Now, she also talked about how there's been people along the way that have really helped her in showing her that she had the potential to do the things that were her dream of being an entrepreneur, her confidence to be a consultant at 24 years old in an industry that she didn't grow up in. And many of us will use those outside things as an excuse and say we can't be good at it because we're being put in the position to do consulting in a profession that we are not a part of. But what you'll find is there's many similarities between all professions, with the things that we do and the fears that people have in their own jobs as they go to leadership, making sure you're making the right decisions for business. And when you can step back and look at, I have something to offer, which I thought was a really important line that she said is, I don't have to know what you know. I just need to know what I know, because that is typically why someone hires you, right? Is that you are giving them some knowledge or enhancing the things that they do because of the time that you've spent grooming yourself, practicing, rehearsing, researching, reading, having experience with other people similar to them. And when you can back up and understand the credibility that you do have, you don't necessarily have to have the same resume as the person next to you. And it's really getting yourself confident in the skills that you do have. So if you haven't done this before, I think it's important for you to step back and write down the things that are awesome about you, that are different, and not to feel like you have to be the same in order to do the work that you do. That what is it about your skill set, your particular way of working and background that is going to contribute to somebody else's life, somebody else's work life, someone else's personal life, whatever that is, so that you feel that your worth matters. Now, the other thing that was really important when she talked about the people that have kind of tapped her on the shoulder and said, "You've got this," is giving the advice of how to make sure you have credibility and that nothing comes easy. So you can have all of the natural skills and tools or talents or communication skills, but if you don't work hard, if you don't put rigor against it, then you're going to get what you put into it. So it's important to understand that no matter who you look at that is successful, how much work went into where you are seeing where they're at today, that you haven't actually been there through all the trials and tribulations and ways that didn't go well and had to learn from them. And there was another great line that Angie said was that no one is going to draw a map for you to be successful. So writing down what is good about you and what is differentiated is really important, but also writing down your vision of what you want your future to look like. What kind of things would you like to do? And I think it's important to always go back and review that again. Maybe each year, maybe twice a year, whatever that is, because we pivot as we get more experience and learn more things. Then we find other things that we can be really good at and excited about and so forth. So it's important that we don't just write that down once and let it sit and never look at it again, that we constantly go back and make sure that it still applies to who we are today and what that next vision looks like and what kind of learning, research, and growth do you need, because we're never finished, that it is always going to be on us to keep moving our path forward. And it's important that we design that and know that it doesn't have to look like the person next to us, that we can create our own path. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.